Welcome to the Rent to Rent Success podcast, all about creating consistent cash flow, escaping the 9-to-5, and really living life on your terms. This is the only podcast entirely dedicated to helping you achieve rent to rent success. It's our place to inspire each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. I'm Stephanie Taylor, your guide on this exciting ride. Let's start up the engines and get ready to fly. Hello, hello, hello. I want to introduce you to a very special edition of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. And it's the first in our series of Struggles to Success. And this is inspired by our guest today, who has got an absolutely incredibly phenomenal story. It actually made me cry the first time I heard it, but I'm hoping to keep dry today. And the story is of our guest who was pregnant and homeless at 17. She was a managing director of a company by 30 and a #1 best-selling author by the age of 36. And we're going to delve into, in this episode, of her struggles to success and the takeaways that we can have as we are building and moving forward in our own stories of struggle to success. And Sonia also has her own podcast, which is called Struggles to Success, and is worth an absolutely listen. It's binge-worthy content. You'll get so much from it, and I really encourage you to join. And Sonia now has her own business called Love Mondays, where she helps grow businesses for social good. I know that you're going to get so much out of this story, just like I did. And let's introduce a fantastic success story, Sonja Leason. Hello.
Wow, what an intro.
Thank you. Well, what a story.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, certainly.
Yeah, well, Sonja, I would love to start at that moment. You really realized that it just seemed like a low point, because I know there are various dips in the stories, but let's go right back to the first one, where it was that moment you thought, is this what my life is? Tell us about that.
I've had many of those. I think progression isn't kind of just an upward trend. I think there's always ups, downs, circles, round and round. Mm-hmm. But so my dad died very suddenly when I was 8, and had other things that happened in my childhood, which meant that my family broke down and I found myself homeless by 16. I think when I was younger, I didn't realise the impact of that. I think you're quite naive. You don't realise how bad the world can be. And so I just blindly went into life. I knew I had to find somewhere to live. I knew I had to get a job. And so I went to wash pots in a hotel kitchen for 100 hours a week. Wow. At 16. And I was just living in a little tiny room. And very quickly I was pregnant, moved into homeless hostels, and the life that comes with that is one of, it was a halfway house for people coming out of prison, drug addiction, women fleeing domestic violence. So it wasn't really a nice place for a child to be living. But that was, like I said, I just didn't really realise at the time. So I just had to work my way out of it, really. I worked in packing factories, I worked in chip shops, I worked in bars. I really just started, and I always did well at school. I had GCSEs and things like that. But when you're a mum as well at that age, as you know, it's not as easy as you don't take the conventional path. And I think, to be honest, I've always been a worker. So education in the traditional sense of school and college wasn't for me. I've done a lot of courses since then. I'm a lifelong learner, but at that time, school and college, it was quite boring to me. So I just worked my way out of it. However, when my son was a few weeks old, postnatal depression really did hit me hard. Had psychosis. That was a really, really dark time. So again, had to work my way out of that. And we touched on a story of I was walking for an hour to work when I was pregnant to start in a packing factory at 6 o'clock. So I used to leave the homeless hostel at 5. And I actually found a lady who'd slit her wrists, and she was slouched on my doorstep. So I actually had to save her life and call an ambulance before I got to work. And they actually docked my pay because I was late. So when you think it can't get any worse, my life was, and this isn't a victim statement, I feel very blessed with the life that I have now. But in that moment, it was just when you think it can't get any worse, there was always something else that just kept bashing me down. But it took probably, I would say, until my son was about 6. It took me a good 6 years to kind of get myself stable. I luckily got a better house. I got a home. I went through the council flat and all of that stuff. And then I got a house and just worked my way up from there. And then when my son was about 6, we moved away from that council estate and out of that school and got into a much nicer area. And that was a really big point for me. But it took a huge dip, to that point before I got there.
Yeah, honestly, I just think of it because although we've talked about it in a few, minutes, basically in my mind, I could just feel you day after day after day, getting up at 4 a.m. to get to work for 6 a.m. to be in that kind of environment where even though you were there every day doing your best, that they could see a heavily pregnant woman who'd,
I was a girl. I was 17.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I was the fastest on I was one of the fastest on the production lines. I always took overtime because I needed the money. I had a baby coming, and I was on £3.50 an hour because of my age. So I had to save for a baby on £3.50 an hour. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, how anybody could then say, you know what, I can see you there. You must have been so shaken because you've just saved this woman's life. You've arrived at work at 6 and they've docked you. That was where you started.
They docked for £3.50. Well, they used to give us £5 a week for being on time, and they actually took that £5 a week off me.
Yeah.
And so I was down to £3.50 an hour. I mean, it's just nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. And it's just what I want to talk about is how do you get from there to where you are now? And you've described, getting up to when your son was 6 and you sort of felt a little bit more stable and you'd found your feet. What advice would you give to someone who's just going through some sort of trauma at the moment and feeling that everything's going wrong? How did you pull yourself, out from where you were?
Do you know what? I think I'm quite stubborn. That there's people use negative emotions. They're seen as negative, approaches or emotions such as stubbornness. But actually, if I wasn't stubborn, I wouldn't have got through it genuinely. And there have been dark times. Like I've mental health. I'm very, very lucky that I've found therapy. It's like hypnotherapy and trauma processing work. And this has come a lot later in my life. I trained in psychology. All because I needed to understand myself. But I think advice to anybody would be, don't give up. There's been so many times where I felt like my step forward has been that big, but it's an accumulation over the years. No one's expecting you to be okay tomorrow. But when I look back now, even though I've literally just turned 37 last week, my son's kind of grown up. He kind of is unofficially living with his girlfriend. And I'm like, I've just turned 37 and I feel like that part of my life I'm just starting to close the door on because now I've got my time now. And even though at the time I didn't feel like I was really getting anywhere, it's not until you look back and you go, actually, geez, I'm not in that situation anymore. So whatever step forward it is, just keep taking it and just don't give up. I just wanted more for my son. I wanted more for myself. And it sounds horrible, but we've always got a choice. And I made the wrong choice for many years. I went off the rails for many, many years. But ultimately, I still made that choice to say no more. And it wasn't until I said no more myself and decided that I needed to pull myself out of the depression that anything really changed. Nobody can do it for you. And I'm a bit probably sounds a bit tough, and I'm probably a bit tough on myself, but that's the only way that I found to get through it, is to just say, no, I've just got to keep going. I know what's right. I know what I want, and just keep going with it.
And that does take an enormous resolve at the time, because you're in a situation where you don't trust yourself, because you often, when we're in these down times, we have made bad choices on the way there, and you don't trust yourself, and it's hard to then say, okay, I'm going to find my way out of this, because
especially with no support, that's even tougher. And like I said, it took me until a lot later in life to start understanding about, psychology, our response to trauma, and our behaviors off the back of that. And so as I got older, I started getting professional support, whether that's business coaching or life coaching or therapy, or I've always worked with someone. I've always trained, I've always researched. I think I'm quite curious as a person, and I love learning about things. So if there's something that I see that I don't like, I think, right, I'm going to learn about that. I'm going to understand what's behind it. I'm going to understand what's deeper, and I'm going to figure out how to overcome it. And I think, again, that's another thing that has kind of helped me get through it. I do think a lot of luck. I've had a lot of luck. I don't know, there's every time you get to the point where you're like, I can't go on, there's always just been something. And I remember one lady who I had a gas meter when I was in the council flat, and I had £2 and it was snowing outside. And I had, 3 or 4 or 5 days until I got some more money. And I went to put £2 on my gas thinking this is going to heat us for 24 hours and then we're done, like we don't have any more heating. And the lady behind the counter, she put £12 on there instead of 2.
Oh.
And whether she did it by mistake or whether she did it because she could see that, I was really, and I got home and I put it in and I just thought, there's somebody watching me, there's somebody. And there were little things like that all the way along that it keeps you going. And I think if you can focus on those things instead of the negative things, it's a tough thing to do all the time. But if you can try and focus on the positive things and notice those things to keep yourself going, it's a lot better than focusing on the negative ones, even when there are more negative ones than positive.
It is. I find it really touching, because in any of these stories, there's always those moments where somebody reaches out a hand or somebody shows that extra caring, and that's so touching. But tell us about, so your son is 6 now, you feel a little bit more on your feet. How did you get from there to, managing director, published book, and also #1, knocking off Simon Sinek and other people?
Yeah, Elon Musk. We knocked Elon Musk off #1 in small business and entrepreneurship, which was just amazing. But so my son was 6, and I was very lucky. I got a job working in a family-run business, which was self-catering and bed and breakfast accommodation. And when you work for a family business, you have to be so adaptable, because you build in booking programs 1 minute and making beds the next minute. So and then you're dealing with customers. So I had to be really adaptable. And I think that was the first job where I kind of thought, I've kind of run a business. I was doing everything from reconciling the bank to sorting out the towels, And so that gave me huge life experience. And then from there, my son was getting a bit older. I'd been backwards and forwards to college, just because a lot of the years I couldn't afford to go to work. That's the way that it was then. So I kind of worked part-time jobs and went to college, because I got free childcare if I went to college. So I did a lot of different college courses. And then when my son went to school, that kind of opened up more time for me. So I worked part-time and just built my career up from there. So I got into sales, got into marketing, got into advertising, and worked my way up through the corporate, up to a massive, huge international corporate company. And then, in 2012, my son was 11, and he got food poisoning and ended up blind and paralysed. So I lost my job, lost my house, lost everything I'd worked for, and almost lost my son as well at the same time. So I had to give up work. I cared for my son full time for 6 months because he was off school, and then slowly started reintegrating him. It took about 2 years to get him back on track. So 12 months later, I went back to work, which was the only thing I knew how to do. You just go and get a job, don't you? Because that's just what you do. And I worked there for 12 months and it was really brilliant. Again, it was a small company and I worked my way up to kind of key account operations kind of manager. And after 12 months, I just thought, why am I doing this again? Why am I building myself up again for somebody else? If I'm starting from nothing all over again, I'm going to do it for myself. And so I walked out of my job with no idea, no money, no nothing, single mum, and got my laptop and thought, right, what can I do? And set up Love Mondays the next day. And that was February 2014. Wow. So, yeah, some people would say I was ballsy. Some people say I was stupid, but I had nothing to lose at that point. Like I'd lost everything so many numerous times before that kind of didn't scare me anymore. And I just wanted something different, for myself and also for my son. I just thought there's no stability when you need it. So I might as well do it for myself. And that's how Mondays was born.
Thanks for being on board today. And you know what Steph would love more than a cute dashhound photo on Instagram? It's you. She'd love to hear from you about what's stopping you getting started, about what rent-to-rent wins you've had this week. Slide into her DMs. She's at Stephanie T Property on Insta, or just click rent2rentsuccess.com/Insta. That's rentsuccess.com/Insta, and it'll take you straight to her profile. Now more than ever, life is all about staying connected. So let's talk.
So let's move from there into what eventually Love Mondays. What is Love Mondays now? What do you do and offer?
Yep. So I run a business growth consultancy. So we help businesses grow for impact and social good. So I work with a lot of charities, coaches. I tend to work with a lot of people who are already doing good in the world. And I suppose what is behind that is that I never want to see anyone suffer. I never want anyone to feel the suffering I felt. And so if I can help people to build their businesses, build their lives, and be in a stronger position for themselves, that ultimately is what drives me. And I love what I do. We've done some amazing projects. So yeah, we help people grow online. So that would be kind of strategy, communications, websites, automations, online courses, funnels, that kind of thing. And we also help them grow offline. So building high performing teams. I mentioned that I trained in psychology, psychometrics. I'm fascinated by human behavior. And again, I touched on that before about, our trauma responses. That's on the kind of negative level, but actually on the positive level, who are we? What do we want to do? What drives us? And then building your team around the owner to ensure that you've got a really high performing business online. And then that's delivered by a high performing team offline. So it's taken a while to get here. Like in the early days, I was waitressing, I was taking on £15 an hour admin jobs. I just had to do anything to get the money in. And then over the years, I've just honed it and thought, what am I good at? All of my background's in sales and marketing and advertising. I worked for an outsourced recruitment company in those 12 months. I said I went back to work and I just loved that. I loved the human element of it. So I kind of brought the two together and thought, well, you can't really grow businesses without advertising and marketing and people. So that's how it was kind of born. And yeah, I'm seven years in now. And it's given me some amazing opportunities. And obviously the podcast, the book, we wrote a book for women to help other women in business. So yeah, a lot of positive things have come out of my struggle and hopefully I've turned them into success.
So I want to pick up on three things there, but I'm writing the other two down just so I don't forget them. So the first one is, just in case anybody's watching, a lot of people are now pivoting from maybe they had an in-person business or used to deliver their services in person and they're now pivoting online. What kind of business do you help? Is it a sole trader, or someone on their own, a solopreneur, if you will, or is it bigger businesses that you help at the moment? Who would you love to get in touch, or who could you help the best?
Kind of both, but it's different for everybody. For solo people, it's so tough balancing that time thing. We've only got 24 hours in a day. And so if you can move the coaches, for instance, if we can move those people online and automate huge amounts of their pipelines and sales processes, it just frees up so much more time. But then people who have got staff, I think that's about building, understanding who you are. So I'm trained in psychometrics and we do personality profiling. So I would profile the business owner, profile a team, and then plan out everybody's different personalities and how to grow from there. A lot of people at the moment, obviously, have got a lot of teams on furlough and people on furlough. And I think a lot of people, I'm actually going to be writing a course on this, who to get back, when to get them back, who do you need to kind of build your business to stage 1 so that then you can move to stage 2 and move to stage 3. But I think, people that are on their own, they really need to, or smaller businesses, it's really important to kind of move as much as possible online to just free up your time. So then you can use your time to innovate better rather than deal with admin, which nobody needs that.
Yeah, and that's so true. And that automation has been a real game changer within our business, as I've shared with you. But Abigail has said, yes, I'm glad you asked that. Well, she said, yes, was already thinking about how to get hold of Sonia. And I thought people might be thinking, am I the right sort of person, as a solopreneur, or are you for bigger businesses? But I think you're for both. Is that right?
So we've worked with smaller businesses. They've got to be turning over a bit of money, or at least have access to that, because, as you know, it is not a small job to build online courses or automate any, and there's a lot of technology involved. So if they're in a position to be able to kind of really move everything online, it is an absolute game changer. It's a real game changer. And as you said about your online courses, you got to the point where you were like, hang on, I'm delivering this over and over and over. Surely I can build an asset out of this. And once you do that, it's really exponential growth from there.
Yeah. That's been our experience. So if that's your situation, that you are looking to automate or do an online program or have online assets, then definitely Sonia is your woman. But you will have to invest a lot of time and a reasonable amount of money as well. But in comparison to the returns, the investment we found was small.
Yeah. And so talking about maybe people in property, I'm sure there will be processes that you would have to manage that you could probably turn into a digital asset so that you could then free up that time, whether that be dealing with inquiries, whether you want to get into training such as you did. There's always something, I think, there's always an angle. And I always say you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I found it so important to work with other people, because I was so in my own life, it kind of took somebody else to say, how about this? How about that? How about this? And that's when you can start going, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Just get that different perspective. There's always a way to grow your business. You've just got to be. And I suppose that's one thing that's come out of my life is I'm able to always find a way out. I'm always able to find a better way forwards. I've always been quite resourceful, luckily. And I think that helps me in my business now, because quite often people come with problems and I am quite good at solving them. I can usually find a way of solving a problem in somebody's business that they haven't thought about. And I'm quite lucky to have that experience behind me that I can transfer into business, really.
Great. Well, I was slightly distracted there because we've had a few comments. Lois says, inspirational. And
I'm going to start blushing in a minute.
Iris says that, I love this. And that was when you were talking about what your company Love Mondays does, because she has a recruitment agency. So that would be good for her. And also she's got a solar products that she wants to sell online. So that could work well. Now, a couple of the other things that you mentioned that I wanted to pick up on was the book. We need to discuss this a little bit more. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I was so blessed to go on a business accelerator course down in London, and I just met the most. Do you know something? We touched, when you came on my podcast, we touched on the shame that you have being a single parent, and especially where I came from. And the day before I had to walk into this accelerator in London. I'd never even been to London other than to see Buckingham Palace. So to go there for work was just like out of this world. And the day before I went, I stood on my friend's front garden and I was crying. So I was like, they're never going to accept me. They're real business owners and I'm just a single mum. And she was like, Sonia, seriously, you'll be fine. And I ended up meeting the most inspirational people. And the more I spoke to people, the more I realised entrepreneurs don't just appear from nowhere. Quite often they've got stories like mine. Quite often they've got adverse situations in the past that's kind of made them grow and want to do something bigger, better, or for others. And when on this course, I met with 9 others, so there was 10 of us altogether, female business owners, and we came up against quite a lot of sexism, believe it or not, in 2019. And we just got so sick of it, and we just said, you know what, we have got skills. We might not do it the way men do it, but actually, when men and women come together in a team, we have both got such amazing skills. No one is better than another. They're both good in equal measure, but in different ways. And so I said, right, let's come together. So 10 of us from all around the world, from Jordan to Ireland, all came together and wrote a chapter on our specialism, both hard and soft skills in business for women in business. And it's called A Woman's Work. So a woman's work is never done, basically. It's called A Woman's Work. And we launched it in September last year. And we got to #1 on Amazon in small business and entrepreneurship. And we knocked Elon Musk off #1. And we knocked Simon Sinek off #2. So, yeah, that was an amazing achievement. And I get people messaging me on LinkedIn saying, you know, thank you so much for inspiring us. And yeah, it's just an amazing project.
Yeah, no, okay. A Woman's Work. And I'm guessing people get that on Amazon.
Yeah, it's 99p on Kindle, actually. We did that as a launch offer and we've just never changed it. So people can get it not for 99p on Kindle. And we've got so many people in there. We've got a lady who has been 25 years in the fashion industry. I mean, can you imagine? We've got a lady in property. We've got an international business coach. So everyone from huge corporate, you know, big business coach, big business, all the way down to smaller businesses. And we've tried to keep it really practical. So we give a lot of tips and skills and our stories, how we've overcome them. You know, there's resilience in there. So there's really something that hopefully will help most, you know, everyone.
Brilliant. That's great. And then you've got your own podcast, Struggles to Success. And that's where I got this whole idea from.
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't believe the amount of people I spoke to. I went in with all this shame, like, oh my God, I'm a single mom, no one's going to accept me. And I remember his name was Alex. He really inspired me, and he was a lot younger than me at the time. But we went out for dinner after our course, and I sat next to him. We just got chatting, and he said that he hit 21 and he had a bad experience with his mum. And he was lying in bed, you know, on a downward spiral, and he just Googled how to get rich. And within something like 12 months, he was kicked out by his mum, homeless, nowhere to go. He had like over £1 million worth of property. And he was a police officer. And yeah, he was just downtrodden, you know, he was in a real hard job. And he used every single penny of his savings to invest in property and just build this portfolio and really got himself sorted. And I was like, it isn't just me. It's not just me who has done this. So I decided to start the podcast, and we did season 1 last year. So that's that you can listen to it now. And then obviously season 2, I am recording right at this moment, is with the audio engineer, just getting it all edited. So that will be out again. But I've spoken to everybody. The most inspirational was a Paralympian. He was in the job centre, and he was applying for admin jobs. He had nothing. And then he went on to win 4 gold medals at the Paralympics in London. I mean, how does, you know, it's just incredible. So yeah, there's stories from, you know, female entrepreneurs in technology, coaches. We did a mental health awareness week. One as well. So yeah, it's really quite broad. It goes from everything from bipolar through to homelessness, and they've all kind of turned it into businesses that give back.
Yeah, that's the other thing as well, because you're very much about the social impact and the business for good, basically. I've listened to your podcast, and it's totally binge-worthy content. It takes you through all the aspects, but it's so uplifting and inspiring.
That's what I wanted. I wanted it to be inspiring. I think there's so much, with social media, we're always like, oh, they go on better holidays than me. They look happier than me. And I wanted to get away from that. We've all struggled. Everybody struggles. What I put on social media is not really what is going on in my life. I put nice pictures of my son on because I'm not going to put myself looking miserable on there. So you can't really compare yourself to everyone else's social media. It's not true. And I thought, I'm going to rip all that away and just say, tell me about your pain. Tell me about how you turn that into something, because that's what people, I think, I would prefer to listen to that rather than just go look at the amazing holidays and going, yeah, but how did you get there? How did you get to that point? So yeah, I've just tried to share those stories of people just to inspire and also show people that they're not on their own, because I think that's so important. Business can be quite lonely.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a managing director on your own or in a small company, it's quite tough, isn't it?
I think that's so important to remember what you just said there, which is that everyone has their own struggles. We often look at other people and think, oh, well, that's okay because they have, I don't know, whatever the thing is, they're younger than me, they've got more education than me, or whatever the thing is. And that means it's okay for them. But we don't know what's behind the curtain. And everybody will have their own struggles, and it's important to remember that. And because, just bringing this back to property, because this will be on the Rent to Rent Success podcast, which is a property podcast, it was interesting there that you mentioned Alexander, who I'm guessing is Alexander Siri.
Yeah, it's fab.
Yeah, who is incredible. And it just goes to show that within a year, you can go from, as you said, homeless and penniless, Googling, finding out the info, to having £1 million having bought £1 million of property. And there are lots of creative strategies and ways to get started. And I know that you're involved in property, but the thing that holds people back, and why I thought this interview series would be useful even within our niche property podcast, is because that everybody, when they're starting, tells themselves all sorts of stories like, oh, I don't think I can do this, or they had a knockback. And so you have to get over the struggles to success in this area where you may have already been successful somewhere else, and now you need to become successful in property. Hey there. Are you curious about making money from properties you don't own? Watch your free Rent to Rent Success Masterclass and get the full lowdown on Rent to Rent with me. Get started at rent2rentsuccess.com/guide. That's rentsuccess.com/guide. You'll learn more about Rent to Rent and how it can change your life. Okay, now let's get back to the show. So going back to you, Sonia, what advice would you give to your younger self, in those moments of real struggle where you just looked around yourself and thought, I don't know how to do this?
There's been so many. Do you know something? I remember coming home and I had food shopping over every single arm and shoulder, and it was just so heavy, and it was raining, and I just got in and the front door was still open, and I just dropped the bags and I was just crying on the floor. And I actually thought, I can't get up. Like, I'm smiling about it now. Yeah. But at the time, I just thought, I can't do it. Like, I can't keep going on like this. And what I've noticed is when you get to that level, something happens to bring you out of it, whether you get a new client or a relationship and what I've noticed is it's when you hit rock bottom and you've got nowhere to go, it's almost like you're renewing into something new. And so I was so scared of change when I was younger, and I tried to cling on. I think because I was so scared of being homeless, I just tried to cling on to everything. But actually, I didn't want to cling. Council housing is you know, it's so needed. And I don't mean that, you know, in any negative way, but I was clinging on to this home when actually I wanted more, I wanted better, I wanted bigger, I wanted, you know, a stable life in a nice area. But I was clinging on to it. So I think my advice to myself, and I still have to remind myself of this, is that you can't get where you want to go without change, and fearing that. We all fear change. We all want a little bit of stability in our lives, otherwise we'd go mad. But I think it's just having faith. I try and remind myself to have faith, because every time something bad has happened, it has never, ever, ever been worse. You know, nothing has changed for the worse. It's always changed for the better. And I try and be quite spiritual about it and just think, you know, we're all here for evolution. Ultimately, we're here for evolution. And so I don't believe it's really possible to go backwards. It's all for something, as long as you learn the lessons. That's the important thing. So learn the lessons and don't be afraid to, you know, let go for something new, because nothing new can come if you're clinging on to the old. But it takes balls of steel. It does.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I just want to recognize you for all you do and for being the inspiration that you are, just by being who you are. You remind us all that, you know, we can all do more and do better than we are doing. Olivia would like to know where you're from. I know you're not from London, but where are you from?
No, well, I'm from just south of Birmingham originally, but I live in Worcester now, which is, some people might know of Worcester sauce, which is probably about 30 miles south of Birmingham. So before lockdown, I was in London a lot, but I haven't been for a few months now, but hopefully I can go back very, very soon. But yeah, I'm based in Worcester.
Yeah, so I'm just going to sort of bring this to a close, and just your story, it so inspires me, and I just marvel at your resoluteness and how you got through that, and the cruelty of the world for. And often that happens, doesn't it, in pockets? You've had a difficult childhood. Your parents maybe weren't in a position to support you. You ended up homeless. And then things upon things, you've got these very low paying jobs where people obviously don't care about you. And then it's just one thing after another, but you've picked up, you've turned it around, and you're now giving back. Tell us a little bit about, as in my language, it's believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer. And so this would come into the game changer category. So tell us a little bit more about how you're giving back, Sonia.
I got to the point where I feel fulfilled. Ultimately, I feel quite fulfilled. I've got a life that I never, ever thought I would have. And what do you do after that point? And for me, it was, I've just got to help other people. And I started telling my story. That took a lot. And then people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then more people started speaking to me. And then I was like, oh my God, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can change things. And so over the years, we've done some amazing things. Myself and my son slept rough for charity with some other business owners in the area, and we raised over £40,000 for local homeless charity. Like I said, we work with businesses that do good. So I've worked with a care agency that were going under, and we actually took them from 4 staff, and I think they had about 4 clients, to 24 staff or 28 staff in 18 months.
Wow.
So and the impact that had on the local community, because obviously they were caring for so many more elderly people. It's amazing. I try and do as much as I can with homelessness charities especially. And so I align to United Nations global goal of no poverty, because I remember once having to share a loaf of bread with another mum at the school because neither of us could afford to feed our children. And that is poverty, and that's working poverty. I've worked 3 jobs and still only just been able to get by. And that's what drives me now. I don't want people to be struggling in their own business. There's always a way forwards. And you speak openly about this, which I think is brilliant. You don't have to be turning over millions if you don't want to. If you want to be a millionaire, go be a millionaire. But if you just want to earn 40, 50, 60 grand a year, even if you wanted to just earn 10 grand a year, it's all out there. You just got to know what you want and kind of go for it. So yeah, I do try and give back as much as I can, really, and I think it's important.
And what I love about it is, well, first of all, I wanted to go down the rabbit hole of how did you take the care home from 4 to 40, but now is probably not the time and
The
place.
manager was amazing. Working with she was just amazing. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of work, but it was amazing still.
It's an example of the sort of things that your business does, and we've had a taster of it as well, because on the side of our property business, we started our training business, and through a lot of the automations that you talk about, we've helped over 200 people with our programs, and that translates into a very significant turnover. But what I want to say to people is, when I was, a single mum as well, I was also a young mum. You aspire to a job that you think is a well-paid job that actually is very, very demanding, a senior, in inverted commas. But now within our business, the monthly turnover is much more than the previous annual salary. So for everyone watching, you have that potential. And I just want to say, go for it, because it's actually easier to have your own business and bring in that increased revenue that enhances your lifestyle and helps you to help other people as well, than it is to struggle and have that lower income that comes from a job where the people may not care about you if you get sick, or if your son gets sick, like happened to you, they just cast you out.
And you have to be there 9 to 5. Like now, sometimes I work part-time, sometimes I work 17-hour days, but ultimately that flexibility is there, isn't it? And I think for me personally, that's really important to have that flexibility. And I think you get that with, automating business, recurring income. It's a lot better model, I think, and hopefully you found the same, to have that recurring income and lead generation taken care of makes a huge difference.
A huge difference, yeah. And I just want to turn to a few comments. Janine's delighted that you're near her.
Yeah, I was from Kimber originally, which is near Stourbridge, so not far. More of a black country girl.
And Prince is saying this is a wonderful conversation. I totally agree, Prince. And Janine is saying it's the first time she's heard of you, Sonia, and she's feeling so inspired. And Iris is saying that she needs you in her care agency. It's on life support.
Yeah, this one was, and I'll tell you something, the manager was incredible. She's just incredible, like in every way. And that makes a huge difference. And they wanted to do good. They just found themselves on really tough times. And the industry at the moment is obviously going through it. So, it's not an easy industry at all. Quite a high staff turnover. But we did turn it around. Their staff turnover was really minimal after 12 months. It is possible.
So Iris, get on the phone, and we'll give the contacts in a moment. And Lois, who is hugely inspirational, she's part of our Rent to Rent Kickstarter program. She's one of our coaches. She's doing phenomenally in London, and also Lois has this amazing YouTube channel. It's called Life with Lois, and she's sort of it's more sort of fashion, lifestyle, but also business.
I'll give you a follow. I've never got into YouTube. I've got probably 2 people that I follow that I watch, but that sounds amazing. So I'll give you a follow in a second.
And definitely, Lois, you do need to get it. You do need to get in touch with Sonia. Sonia, I could keep talking to you because there's so many little points that you've brought out that I've made a note to myself. Need to ask Sonia about this, but. Iris is saying she loves that your monthly salary was your yearly salary. Yeah,
we shared on our conversation on my podcast that I remember a huge turning point for me again is trying to see these little points where you think I'm getting there. Is I remember getting the first time I had a proper job, I remember getting a paycheck where I'd paid more in tax than I'd lived on in the previous month, and I thought, damn, paying that much tax, but at least, that's a step up for me. And it's crazy, isn't it? That's a real turning point for me.
Yeah. So I inspire you all, everyone watching, listening. If you feel that things are not quite where you want them to be, you have the power. As Sonia said, some of us do have a tougher start, but we all have a choice. And what would you say in sort of closing and wrapping things up, Sonia? What would you like people to go away with?
Just don't give up. I think even though we're in lockdown and COVID and all of that's going on, I think we're in such an introspective time where actually we can go in and say, what do we want? And start building digitally, start thinking of the longer term, because I think now if you start putting things in place, you're going to be really fine. But don't see anything as a setback. I try and learn the lessons and move forward. And sometimes it's really tough to see what is the universe trying to tell me here. But if you can learn that lesson, you'll move forward. And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that's a mentor or an online course or a therapist or anything. Don't be afraid to get, support from people, because I think life is just so much better with a network and, amazing people around you.
Those are both amazing points to end on, Sonia. Do ask for help, and absolutely just keep going. Those little steps all add up. Now, Sonia, a lot of people have been listening thinking, oh, I think Sonia can help me. How can people find out more and get in touch with you?
Yep. So my website is wearelovemondays.co.uk. And my email is sonia@wearelovemondays.co.uk. I am Sonia with a J. That isn't a spelling mistake. However, I will get Sonia with an I as well. So you can just drop me an email. Otherwise, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. And I'm the only Sonja Leason spelt like that in the world. So you can find me anywhere. Instagram is Love Mondays HQ. Twitter is Love Mondays HQ.
Is that there? Is that right there?
We are Love Mondays.co.uk. Yep, that's it. Perfect.
So that's how you can get in touch with Sonia. And she's got her Struggles to Success podcast.
Yeah, do have a listen. I'm going to be putting season 2 up very shortly. So that will be coming soon, which is going to be yours. So
yes. I have an interview on season 2. And that's where I had the idea to take our property podcast a little bit off-piste with this Struggles to Success. And just as we close, I want to call out TJ Atkinson saying this is amazing. Hello.
Hi, thank you.
And Jenny saying it's such an inspirational conversation.
Wow, great hair, Jenny. I love your hair.
Yeah. Great look in total.
Yeah, great. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Great photo.
But thank you so much, Sonia, for coming and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
And we look forward to learning more from you. I'm going to speak to you immediately after this to find out more. I've got lots more questions, but thank you for watching and listening, and we will be back again next week with the Rent to Rent Success podcast. See you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. If you like the links for anything mentioned in today's episode, or if voice is not enough and you want to see us on video too, you can find all the show notes and lots more at renttorentsuccess.com. That's rent number 2, rentsuccess.com. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd super appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to review it in your podcast app. Remember, we'll be donating to our B1G1 charities too for each review you give. Until then, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer.